Black Box Radio. We're in the RONAreport, and we have Adam Dodgshon today. Say hi, Adam, to the people.
Hello, how are you?
Listen to that accent. Love it, love it. So, as I can hear, you're originally from?
I'm originally from York in England.
York in England. And You're now in the States in Maryland, right?
I am in Prince George's County, yes, Fort Washington.
So let's talk about, what do you professionally do? What would you normally be doing in this, in April, or at your job or in your life?
Work-wise, it's a pretty regular office job in many ways. It's, in sort of a 9-to-5 deal. We do a lot of evening meetings every now and again. But yeah, I would normally have been enjoying, colleagues' company. We've got quite a sort of a convivial atmosphere in the office. So we do collaborate well together. We work in little small groups and break-offs, and no one's sort of left to feel too alone or anything. And we certainly miss that. We've been plugging into each other with video chat and all that sort of stuff, but it's not quite the same. So I am kind of missing that. But April time is usually another reason for being fun for me, is because my birthday's in April. So this year we did actually have a lot of things planned, but they've all had to be put on the back burner. But it's, there are more important things in life. So we'll have a big celebration when we get the chance.
I feel for the people who have birthdays. I hear a lot of that. So
but
like you can replan. As long as you're living, you can replan the birthday.
Exactly. It's just a date in the calendar. It can happen anytime, really.
Okay. And you said you have a great, office. You guys get along really well. What do you actually do? So
I'm a planner for Prince George's County in the community planning division, and we're responsible for taking the sort of the master plans that have happened in the county and trying to kind of get into the communities and talk about if those are the things they still want to see happen, and then try and make them happen. So some of the stuff we're doing has been quite a long time coming. Some of the plans are a bit old, but due to various reasons, we're now sort of unpacking them, if you like, and saying, now's the time to get out there and see if we can make good things happen.
So, and city planning is like 50 years out, right? It's not
Yeah, there's a couple of sides to it. So the strategic side, if you like, the plan making side is the long range part. And then obviously there's a development review division, which they take care of the daily applications. So they'll be right down in the applications for anything, from a small extension on the side of a house right through to, 1,000 dwellings or more. So they deal with the daily stuff, and we deal with the sort of the strategy and thinking about what the place could be like the current plan goes to 2035. So that's the guiding plan for the county right now.
Yep. It's always, okay, that's how you plan.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Okay, so you're, we know you now live in Fort Washington, but you have a huge relationship in the UK. I'm sure your family's there. And so how has that affected you not there with them? I know you're in constant communication. How's that going?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, what's happened with the virus has just sort of brought everyone else to my kind of normal in terms of communicating with loved ones. My mum and I, we email every day. She's in her 80s, and so is my dad. And they FaceTime pretty much once a week. She always seems to want to have an appointment and sort of tell me precisely when she's calling me, which is quite funny. I think she's just panicking about missing a call otherwise. And so she just says, I'll call you at 6 p.m. my time on this day. And I'll say, okay, I shall be standing by. So, we have a good chat once a week, and we email all the time, every day. I have 2 sisters, and they're chatting a lot, and we're on various sort of group chats on WhatsApp and stuff like that. So we share pictures, and I can keep up to date that way. And friends too, I have a kind of a small selection of very good friends, and we're in regular contact as well. So, it's in that respect, it's sort of strangely business as usual for me. I don't really feel any different from, last year or the year before. But obviously when I first moved to the States, there was that initial kind of, I'm somewhere completely different now. And the time difference is 5 hours. So you have to kind of factor that in. If I was finishing work at 5 p.m., it's too late for mum and dad. So they've already gone to bed. So there's a couple of people there I can't talk to. And, it does sort of change your perspective a little bit on those relationships.
So really, since you've been in States a few years, you've already had this relationship away from your family anyway. So
Yeah, I've been here just over 3 years now. We try and get over twice a year, which is great. Obviously, there's nothing like seeing somebody in person.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of alternate Christmases because obviously the Corey's family down in North Carolina. So we'll spend the Christmas over in England, and then the next Christmas will be in North Carolina. And whichever Christmas we're not doing, we'll do Thanksgiving in the other country. So although we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in England because it's nothing to do with English history, we
Right.
take we take it as an opportunity to nothing to do with it from our
Just to
side.
hang out, eh?
Yeah, just to hang out. It's a 4-day weekend, so we can use that and get over there.
Okay. So you do observe it, but it doesn't really mean anything. I love it. Same thing here. Trust me.
Right.
Yeah. No different.
Sometimes it's difficult to have a vacation time when other people still are working. So it's maybe hard to get people together because it's life as normal for them, even though you're off, like they're on a holiday.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, fortunately for me, or fortunately for my two sisters in particular, they've both been able to retire relatively early. They're in their 50s, but they've both been able to retire. So, but that wasn't the case 2 years ago. But this year onwards, they're both retired, so they're more available than they would otherwise have been. But you're right, my friends are still working, and I can't sort of say, "Hey, it's Thursday afternoon, come round." They're like, "No, can't do it." So, you have to try and blitz the weekends and see as many people as you can in a short space of time.
Okay. And I'm sure it's been a huge adjustment to being a Yankee.
It has in many ways. I mean, clearly...
A Yankee? What is this?
Yeah, this is a southern state, right? So, I guess...
We're Yankees here.
We're Yankees. The thing about it is, obviously there's a language barrier because nobody understands a word I'm saying. But...
and it's English? Okay.
Right. Other than that, just certain words I use. It's quite funny. I'll start talking about various things and someone will say, I could say to somebody, "Oh, I'll see you in a fortnight." And they'll just look and say, "You'll see me in a fortnight?" And of course, there's now a game called Fortnite. So everyone's thinking about that. But a fortnight is 2 weeks. So I'm so used to saying it. I started saying it over here and everyone just blinked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" So,
little language things. That's true.
But fitting in has been really, really easy. Obviously, it's the two Western cultures, very, very similar kinds of lifestyles. I had a friend who did a 2-year sort of piece of contract work over here, and he brought his wife and 2 kids over, and he was really reluctant to go back to England. And I asked him, we were talking about whether we would try and settle in the UK or America, and he said, the quality of life is so much higher here in general. And I think he means things like the way things are geared towards customer service and take, for example, something really simple like a campsite. He said in America, you've got a campsite, it's got all the facilities you could ever possibly want, it's really well maintained. In England, it's like, well, here's a gate, here's an open field, put your tent where you like and have fun. It's entirely different kind of thing in that respect. It's much more geared here towards the customer experience and towards making everybody safe and having a good time, or at least, in general. And I think they're right. Also, things like, the value of certain professions here. Planners are much more valued in terms of what their salary is than they are in the UK. And consequently, the kind of house we bought in Fort Washington and we're living in is not the kind of house we'd have been able to afford to live in the UK, especially if we'd stayed around the London area. It would have been,
You would have been in a flat.
It would have been a flat, exactly. Yeah, that's right, Jay. It would have been a tiny little flat with probably everything in one room and paying about the same amount of money. So,
quality of life is much better at this point.
It is. I mean, obviously, you take some things. I just mean in the broadest sense, the quality of life. Clearly, there could be small things here and there which are different. Obviously, there are lots of things that are different in terms of things like gun laws and that kind of stuff. But generally, the quality of life, without being too serious and deep about it, is better here. But there are clearly many aspects that are strange.
Got it. You said strange. I like how you put that. That's
So
another interview. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So with regards to the coronavirus and the restrictions that it's having here on people's movements, and how is that compared to what your friends in the UK are saying is happening there?
It's funny. I think because it seemed to hit the UK slightly before it hit the US, or at least the volume increased more in the UK, and they were certainly aware of what's been happening in Italy, which was European epicenter for some time. In fact, it was the global epicenter, I guess, for some time. Cases kind of ballooned in Italy before they really got going in the UK. The political response was a strange one. They seemed to be trying everything except what seemed to everybody else like common sense. They were talking about herd immunity, for example, quite some time ago. And it's like, well, that's fine if you have a vaccine, because then you're supposed to give people the vaccine and they spread the herd immunity. But no one was immune at that point, so it doesn't. There isn't really any herd immunity to spread. So they were a bit behind the curve in terms of what other European countries were doing. But now it's the same thing. They have kind of I guess, what do they call it? Stay in place.
Shelter in place.
Shelter in place. Thank you. That's the one. And people are on a bit of a high alert. My parents live in a small village on the outskirts of a fairly small town, which is where I grew up in. And they've been saying for some weeks before we were even sent home in my job, they were saying, things like it was 2 in, 2 out at the supermarket, and they're very strict on the numbers, and, literally 2 people in this. It was a small grocery store, but there were still only 2 people at a time, which, that was way before they started talking about restricting capacity here in the US. I think they only just did it last week in places like Giant and Walmart around here. But other than that, I think the general sort of controls, if you want to call them that, or at least advice, is exactly the same. It's just that I think it was picked up a little sooner in the UK, notwithstanding the strange conversations about herd immunity and stuff like that.
So what impact did the prime minister contracting? Did that escalate the conversation away from herd immunity and more towards social distancing and everything else?
I think they kind of moved away. Right, exactly. It's like, I guess it's real. No, I think they'd taken that conversation toward that sort of isolation before he was found to have contracted it. It was also interesting, and maybe it's not interesting, maybe it should be how it happens, but, there wasn't a single person, whether they were pro or against Boris Johnson, that would say, he's got the virus. Nobody was happy about it. Nobody was sort of celebrating it. Everyone was saying, it's terrible that he's got it, and we all wish him well, just, regardless of politics. And maybe that should be obvious, but I get the feeling it might not be for some. Right. Well, it's slightly less.
Crunch would not allow that to happen, trust me.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But he, him going in, I think it sort of solidified the idea that this was real and social distancing. Apparently they've been giving, much as I think has happened here, they've been given sort of daily briefings every evening. They were giving updates on, what they were doing, because we have a National Health Service in the UK. So they were talking about how they built, there's a huge conference centre called the XL in London, and they turned that into a 4,000 bed hospital specifically to treat coronavirus patients. And then they said when and if that gets cleared, they will send any unneeded beds and equipment up to some of the larger cities further north. So there's definitely a sort of an attempt to have some kind of really concerted effort, but clearly the scale is hugely different. The scale of the UK, it's smaller than Florida, so it's tiny in comparison to the whole of the state. So you have to take that into account. Any solution can have a countrywide initiative can happen really quickly because you're dealing with such a smaller space, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your perspective is amazing, because we did not know about the UK, so love it. Definitely love that. So we're at the part of the interview where we actually leave something with the community. So it could be a talent, it could be, anything that you're feeling compelled to leave with the community, like your jewel.
Right now, clearly the most important thing seems, the most important message is to sort of try as hard as we can to celebrate the strengths that we do have. And just as a little example, my parents live on the same street that we grew up on. They've been in the house for 50 years, and quite a lot of the other neighbors have been a similar length of time. They decided recently to have a sort of a socially distanced street party. They all have very small square front yards, but they are spaces. And so everyone brought out their own little picnic table. They brought out their own little displays, whatever they wanted to bring out, whether it be like a lucky mascot or something. And it was just a question of saying, hey, we're all here. We all support each other. We're all sharing in this. And I think it brings out that sort of thought in you, which sometimes it's there at the top of your mind. Sometimes it gets buried a bit, that, we're all kind of incredible, people in our own way, and we all have a lot of stories to tell. And this is a really good opportunity to try and think of creative ways to share those stories, whether you just plant something in the front of your yard at the front that people can drive by and look at, or whether you try and make some video content and share it, or you do a radio show or some other such thing, which kind of just gives other people that sort of little extra insight, and that brings you into that sense of community a bit more. We all like to think we have great sense of community where we live, but sometimes it takes something negative to bring out some of the real positive stuff. And this feels like a good time to sort of remind ourselves of that, and to sort of not be shy in celebrating, ourselves and each other by sharing our stories between ourselves.
Awesome. G?
Adam, thank you so much for sharing your unique perspective on the global situation that we're all going through. It really brought a lot of value to our listening community.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
If you are listening right now and you've enjoyed this conversation, you can hear more voices from the Rona Report by visiting blackboxradio.com. That's BLAKBOXXRADIO.com. You can also find Black Box Radio on Instagram and Facebook at Black Box Radio, and you can find us on Twitter at BoxBlack. That's BOXXBLAK. And if you are hearing this interview right now, this conversation right now, that means you found us. Everyone isn't able to find us right now. So if you're hearing this, make sure that you share it to your friends and family on your networks. Share it on your Facebook page. Send it out to folks so more people can experience the Rona Report and hear this important information that we're sharing with the community.
Yep, because they're suppressing the content. But anyway, we're in the Rona Report. It's 4/15/20. We had Adam Dodgshon. Thanks, Adam. We really appreciate your perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
You also.
Sure.
This is Black Box Radio. We out. Peace.